Hello, everybody. It's Peter. Peter with an I, S-T-A-W-A-R-T. And welcome to segment 38 of...
I don't know, the Dark Tower, I guess?
It became evident the dentist wanted to cover the outside of the tower with human teeth.
They marveled at how many teeth had been gathered to make enough to cover the entire top of the building, and wondered how long it would take to finish the project and cover all 60 floors of the tower. "It'd be nice if you could find your own teeth, Nancy," said Frank. The task was an impossible one, or so it would seem. There was something about the numbers and their order that seemed familiar. Just on a hunch, she cracked a file for a patient named Terry Giger. The thumbnail photograph at the top right depicted the patient drawing back in terror from the dentist's letterhead. Almost instantly, Nancy put together the code at the bottom of the page. L57, EF, R11, T312. That was code for level 57, East Face, row 11, tile 312. Terry's wisdom teeth, extracted from her during that particular appointment, were used as part of one of the tiles that sat in one of those boxes in that very room. It was the box they had just looked at. It was a very recent appointment. Nancy recovered her own file and matched it to a particular crate. She'd gotten used to the dentures, but she just wanted her own teeth back on principle. It was sort of gross handling the teeth-covered tiles. None of them wanted to touch the bumpy eggshell white enamel. Finally, Nancy found the tile with the number she was looking for. L57, EF, R6, T125 was written in blue chloride chalk. Supposedly, it had her own teeth on it. It was impossible to tell which ones were hers right off the bat, but she figured she could put each tooth in and, with her tongue, probe around its contours to see if it felt right. With the tile recovered, they sealed the crate back up and tried to put everything back the way it was. They turned off the light and started to make their way out with the treasure under her arm. They felt better having recovered something, and it felt good to be on their way to freedom. "Wait," said Joe. Nancy and Frank looked back to see why Joe had stopped them. He nodded up at the camera, which was staring right at them. It was possible the dentist wouldn't even notice the office had been invaded, and the boxes had been broken into. It was also possible that he wouldn't even recognize Joe, who had only been a student in his class for a short time. And between the face paint and the gritty black and white footage, he might not recognize Frank and Nancy. But on the other hand, it wasn't as if they were stealing pencils. The piece of merchandise Nancy had under her arm was of significant value, and it was likely he'd pull out all the stops to find out who stole it. Nancy tapped her fingers on the desk and squeezed air out through her teeth, rolling her eyes. "Don't worry," she said after a moment. "I'll have it taken care of." And so they went. They made it out of the clinic with no hang-ups, and back to the house for some sleep. The kids had gotten it backwards when they assumed the dentist was starting at the top of the clinic and working his way down. The first set of digits on the file Nancy looked at were L57. That was a new file. The very old files, which were started so long ago that a slightly different shade of vanilla was used, a shade produced by a paper company that wasn't even around anymore, listed LB, L1, L2, and so on to 57. The dentist had been collecting teeth for years to fulfill his dental prophecy. He already had enough tooth tile mosaics stockpiled in his offset warehouse to cover 56 floors, and he only needed enough tiles to cover the top. Nancy, Frank, and Joe were also wrong in thinking that covering the tower with teeth would be the end to his madness. Oh, but no. That was just to cover the outside. Chapter 35. Nancy waited for the secretary to open the office door for the first time that day. She had her own key, the one she had forged, but it would be unwise to offer it up. It would be like the secretary asking for the time, and Nancy extending her wrist to show the secretary her own watch, and then offering to sell it to her. Nancy was anxious, and she wanted to get in that office ASAP. The secretary finally pulled out her key, and before she opened the door, she took time to study it. "There's clay on this," she said, scratching bits off with her fingernail. "I wonder how that got there." Nancy fought the urge to start nervously listing off a whole series of explanations. Instead, she shrugged. She was ready to start jumping up and down, screaming, "Hurry! Before the dentist comes in! Hurry!" The elevator dinged, and the dentist strolled into view, fresh and ready for a new day. "I think I need to have my key cleaned," said the secretary, who had unwittingly crippled Nancy's mission. Nancy would have made her a whole bucket of keys and dumped them over her head if it would have made her move a little faster. With a grin, the dentist brought out his own. He felt like saying, "That's okay, I know you're incompetent. That's why I have my own keys." The statement would have been comically unfair, and he would have been snickering about it all day. But it would have been unwise for him to insult his secretary, who was like an artery to his whole operation. Without her, his business would suffer the equivalent of a stroke, and that would be comically unfair. They made their way inside. "So how are you doing today, Jessica?" asked the dentist. It took Nancy a moment to realize he was talking to her. "What? Oh, fine," she replied. Nancy was going under an assumed name, but little did she know that her name and appearance meant little when it came to the dentist recognizing people. The dentist recognized people by their teeth, and Nancy had some fine ones. They were so perfect and brilliantly white, untouched by the dirty hands of Tartar. Pure and innocent they were. The dentist planned to use the freakishly nice teeth in the lantern of the dome that capped the clinic. It was rare that the dentist ever saw teeth as nice as the ones in Nancy's mouth, and he needed to have them, no matter what. But first he needed to get caught up on files. The dentist was pleased that she would come in early to start work. Nancy seemed calm on the outside, but on the inside she was a brooding maniac. The reason she came in early wasn't to work. Her goal was to replace the surveillance tape with the one she brought from home. She was angry that the bungling secretary couldn't figure out how to use her keys and let her in before the dentist arrived. She was angry that the dentist came in right when the office was opening, and he couldn't just sleep in a little. She was upset with the cretins at the shoe factory that chose a particular kind of synthetic polymer for the laces, which came untied every 5 minutes. There was a whole series of things that were frustrating to her that day, but the top priority on Nancy's mind was switching those tapes after a quick trip to the bathroom. As soon as they got inside, Nancy zipped into the banyo. When she came out, the dentist was waiting at the door so he could brush his teeth and wash his face with the toiletries he kept in there. Nancy tried not to look like she was in a desperate rush as she strolled away. She was satisfied that the dentist was safely hunched over the sink so she could fulfill her plan, which was to switch the tapes and